How's it going, folks? Hope we're all keeping well, and you are very welcome to today's regional geography lesson, okay? And we're focusing on tertiary activities in a non-EU region, okay? So, as you mentioned already, we must know primary, secondary, and tertiary activities in an Irish region, an EU region, and a non-EU region, okay? And our non-EU region is Brazil. Okay, so if we look to the right hand side of the slide there, a quick overview on what we need to do to answer a question such as this. So the first thing we must do is we must name our non-EU region, in this case Brazil, very straightforward. Name two tertiary activities. Our tertiary activities are going to be tourism and transport, and discuss the factors affecting the development of both tourism and transport in 6 or 7 SRPs. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Now, tourism in Brazil is very, very big, okay? And if you look at the picture in the background of the slide, you can kind of see why, okay? You've got really, really nice coastal areas, lovely mountains, lovely cities, lovely seaside resorts, and fabulous weather. So naturally enough, there's quite a lot to attract tourists to Brazil, okay? Tourism is influenced by both physical and human factors. So we've kind of already mentioned the physical factors there. Okay, over 40% of the Brazilian population is involved in tourism. So almost half of the Brazilian population work in some form of tourism, whether it's as a tour guide, opening a restaurant, things like that, travel agents, all those things. Okay. And tourism is massive to Brazil. 60 billion euro per year is generated by tourism for the Brazilian economy. Okay, an absolutely colossal amount of money. Okay, so Brazil really relies on tourism. Okay, tourism is the most developed tertiary activity, and it accounts for 71% of Brazil's economic activity. So more than half of Brazil's economic activity is in the shape of tourism. Okay, so it's hugely important. Okay, and we're going to look at now, while tourism does have a lot of things that help its development, tourism in Brazil actually is hindered by a few things as well. Okay, so there's potential for Brazil to make even more money from tourism if they kind of can iron out a few problems it has. Okay, so the first thing that gives Brazil makes Brazil an ideal tourist location, a holiday location for people, is its weather. Okay, so Brazil's got a hot, sunny, tropical / equatorial climate, okay, and this attracts millions of visitors a year. If you go to Brazil, you're guaranteed to get temperatures between 25 to 35 degrees. Okay, it's got fabulous weather all year round. Okay, and because Brazil, because of its location, the weather does not change drastically. So they don't get frost or snow or ice in the wintertime. Okay, they kind of have this sort of, it's always reasonably warm in Brazil, and it's always nice and bright and sunny. So this is the main factor attracting people, okay? So people can go on holidays in Brazil in the summertime, in the springtime, in the wintertime, and it's no bother. You're always guaranteed to get good weather, okay? And Brazil has lots of other natural attractions there, okay? So things like the Amazon rainforest. So if you look up at the top right there, the Amazon rainforest, huge, vast rainforest. It's got a lot of wildlife. It's got a lot of, lots of people go and take tours around the Amazon. So that's a big attraction for people, in particular people who want kind of adventure holidays. Okay, it's got a lot of idyllic and lovely coastlines. The Bahia coastline, and for example, so look at a picture of the coastline there in the bottom right, guys. Like that's literally like from a postcard. It's absolutely fabulous. Really good weather, lovely tourist resorts, and you've got fantastic scenery in the background. Okay, so those kind of coastlines, you'll find them around Rio de Janeiro, Bahia. They're really fantastic, and they attract a lot of tourists. Okay. Brazil's got also a lot of wetlands. Okay, so a lot of areas that would probably experience tropical rainfall, and these like any wildlife enthusiasts go to visit these. Why? Because they've got loads of unique wildlife that's very unique to the wetlands and to the Amazon rainforest that you wouldn't see anywhere else in the world. Okay, so this attracts a lot of people, in particular kind of wildlife enthusiasts, kind of like wannabe David Attenborough type characters. Okay, now in recent years, Brazil has put a big emphasis on increasing air travel. And why? Because this air travel means that tourism can increase. So it's easier for people around the world to fly down to Brazil. Okay, now, despite all these things that make Brazil good and create a positive experience for tourists in Brazil, there are still a number of things that damage tourism in Brazil. Okay, so we just mentioned one positive transport factor, air travel. Obviously, holidaygoers can get to Brazil easily via an airplane. Okay, but other transport in Brazil is quite bad. Okay, so Brazil's transport's very underdeveloped, okay? So if you look at the picture on the top right of this slide, guys, that's it. Every city in Brazil is like this. Every city has huge, huge traffic congestion. So if you're getting a bus or a taxi from one part of the city to another, you want to have that time, okay? Because you're going to be spend most of the time sitting in traffic. And this hinders tourism, okay? Because tourists don't want to go and have to, sit in traffic for hours to get somewhere, okay? Also, the roads outside of the major cities in Brazil are terrible. Lots of the roads are unpaved dirt roads, okay? So it means, while if you're staying around your resort in Rio de Janeiro, it's fine. If you want to travel outside the city, it's kind of more difficult, okay? Uh, Now, what else is bad for tourism in Brazil? Well, lots of poor parts of the major cities in Brazil are run by gangs, okay? So crime is a big part of life in these poor areas. And those poor areas are often the slums called favelas, okay? And this crime is something that's it's well publicized in the media. Okay, look at the picture in the bottom right there. We see gangs that run certain parts of certain cities. Okay, and this turns people off. Okay, why? Because lots of kidnappings take place. Lots of tourists who don't really know where the safe and dangerous areas are end up getting kidnapped and they're held for ransom and these kind of things. Okay, why do these gangs exist, guys? These gangs exist because of drugs. Okay, so they're basically drug traffickers. Okay, and this crime, so the threat of being kidnapped or getting caught up in some kind of gang violence turns tourists off. Okay, so while tourism in Brazil has got a lot of really good things about it, for example, fantastic weather, fantastic scenery, fantastic Amazon rainforest, fantastic coastline, crime hinders it, and then poor transport hinders it as well. Okay, so if we move on, the government have recognized, okay, that tourism can be needs to be improved, okay, because it's already such a big thing for the Brazilian economy. It's got potential to be even bigger. So they've come up with something called the Plano Aquarela 2020, okay, and this is a plan to double the number of foreign tourists to Brazil over the next 10 years. Okay, and the idea behind this is, guys, making Brazil even more attractive than it already is. Try and get rid of some of the problems it has, and try and make Brazil an even bigger tourist destination. Okay, Brazil as well has held major sporting events down to the last decade. So it held the FIFA Football World Cup in 2014. It held the Olympics in 2016. Okay, the biggest kind of sporting events on the planet. So Brazil, Brazil does have the potential. Brazil can attract these big sporting events, but it still does have problems. Okay, like if you, for example, if any has watched the Olympics or the Football World Cup in Brazil on television, you only ever saw the nice parts of Brazilian cities. You never were shown, say, images of the poor rundown favelas. Okay, so that's the thing. They were very selective about what parts of Brazil that they showed. Okay, so again, it kind of highlights the couple of problems there. Crime is a big one. If they could kind of iron out crime, reduce crime levels, tourism could become even bigger in Brazil. Okay. The second tertiary activity we're going to talk about is transport. Okay, now we've already mentioned transport because transport has a big influence on tourism because tourists really rely on transport when they go on holiday in a country. Okay, and as we've already said, transport in Brazil is quite bad. Okay, so for example, the roads in Brazil are underdeveloped. Okay, though these underdeveloped roads are mainly outside the city. So guys, if you look at a picture on the bottom right of this slide here, you can see like a dirt, gravel, unpaved road. Okay, and that's a typical site outside of a major city in Brazil. The roads are very poor quality. Okay, and then when you're inside the city, the roads might be good, but the roads are crazy. They're so congested. It's very difficult to travel on the roads in Brazil. Okay, and what does this do? These kind of dirt roads, they put tourists off traveling outside the city. Okay, so there could be a really nice area outside the city of Rio de Janeiro, a small village that's got lovely coastline or a lovely kind of forest or lots of good wildlife. But tourists aren't going to want to go there if there's a small little dirt road leading to it. Okay, so bad roads is not good for tourism. Okay, now how else is transport affected? Okay, well, transport in particular when it comes to ports are bad. Okay, so as a result of this, if your ports are bad, that means it's going to reduce your impact to export goods and to import goods. Okay, so there's a lack of seaports in Brazil. Okay, so for example, if you look at the bottom right of the slide, that's Brazil's most advanced seaport. It's very old, rusty looking and run down. okay, very underdeveloped, and this means it's not, they're not going to be able to bring in large quantities of imports on these big trawler ships. Okay, so that's bad for the economy because Brazil can't. It's harder for Brazil to export their goods abroad. It's also harder for them to import goods that they might need. Okay, and why is this? Because their ports are very underdeveloped. Okay, now, has the government done anything to try and rectify some of these issues? Yes. So, government schemes have improved the transport systems within the region. So for example, the Trans-Amazon Highway. Okay, so if we look at the map on the top right-hand side, guys, you can see there are kind of red. The red broken line represents the Trans-Amazon Highway. That's 4,000 kilometers of road which connects Brazil to the likes of Colombia and Peru and parts of Bolivia. Okay, so yeah, it's basically a road that it goes through the Amazon. Okay, but again, this is this is still being built. It's very difficult to build because you're building this road out in extremely remote places through the Amazon rainforest, so it's quite difficult. But it's an improvement. Okay, it's an improvement, and hopefully it'll kind of kickstart maybe the development of secondary activities and kickstart the development of towns and cities along the kind of rural areas near the Amazon. Okay. The final type of transport we're going to talk about in Brazil is its rail network, its rail network and its waterways. Okay, so Brazil is a country that could really do with a good rail network. Brazil's rail network is very underdeveloped, okay, and underused. Okay, so only 25% of freight movement is done by rail. So most of freight movement is done by lorries. Okay, which is obviously not ideal because what do we know about the roads in Brazil? We know they're very underdeveloped in the cities and they're literally dirt, gravel, unpaved roads in the countryside. Okay, so Brazil does not use enough of its rail. Okay, but in the last couple of decades, Brazil has invested in rail. For example, 20%. The rail's grown by 20% since the 1990s. Okay, but if you look at the picture at the top right, guys, that's a Brazilian rail line there, and that's literally on the edge of a big mountain. So fairly underdeveloped, kind of old, and probably dangerous. So you can kind of see why maybe the rail system is underused. Okay, a final thing that Brazil has that they do not use enough is their rivers, their waterways. Okay, so if you look at the map on the bottom right, guys, those are some examples of some Brazilian rivers. Okay, now that's not even all the rivers, that's just the main ones. Okay, so Brazil has got a 48,000 kilometer waterway network of rivers. Okay, and what could these rivers be used for? Transport. Okay, big haulage ships, trawlers could easily transport stuff from city to city or from one region in Brazil to the other via these waterways. Okay, however, they don't use them enough. They're very underexploited. Okay, and these waterways only account for 13% of Brazilian haulage traffic. Okay, what does this mean? It means the rest of haulage must be done by the bad roads or by the bad trains. Okay, so despite all the rivers, they don't use them enough. And why is this? Well, in fairness, a lot of the rivers are in very remote parts of Brazil going through the Amazon, so it's quite difficult. Okay, guys, to recap, transport. Okay, what about transport? Well, we know the roads in Brazil are very underdeveloped, they're unpaved, and the good roads in the city are they're basically car parks. You spend more time sitting in traffic. Okay, what else? Brazil's got very bad and underdeveloped ports. What does this mean? They can't import and export goods. And what else? We know that the government is trying to build a Trans-Amazonian Highway. We can see the red dotted line in the map here in the top right. But again, this is a very long and slow and arduous process because it's going through the Amazon rainforest and it's very difficult to navigate that area. Okay. Final two parts about transport that are underdeveloped. So Brazil has an underdeveloped rail network. Only 25% of its heavy freight is brought by rail, although they have increased this rail network by about 20% since the 1990s. What else? Waterways. Brazil's got 48,000 kilometers worth of waterways. Look at the map there in the bottom right. But Brazil does not use these near enough. Okay, only 13% of Brazil's haulage and freight traffic is brought via these waterways. Again, they're probably difficult to use because some of them are in remote areas. But again, hopefully with more investment, they can improve these. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching.